My mom asked me what I wanted to do one time. I said, I want to hunt turkeys. And she said, well, I mean, okay, you can do that. And then I came to her a year or two later. I said, how can I make $1 million hunting turkeys? And you know what? I'm 52 years old and I hadn't figured that one out yet.
That's hilarious.
So if I do, though, I'm going to keep it a secret.
Land ownership, number one, is a blessing. It's an absolute underpinning for our whole country and our whole constitutional democratic republic. Is without private land ownership, you don't have freedom.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome into the Southeastern Land Show along with my good friend Cary Farrington. I'm Brian Watts, and we're glad you're here with us this morning. Cary, we got a lot of great feedback for last week's show, and we appreciate all of our listeners that tuned in and listened to us, and we're glad you're back with us this week, and we've got another great episode this week and a fantastic guest, don't we?
I'm excited to meet Mr. George Mann this morning and chat with him about all the fun things he's had going on in his life and his career and legacy. So, yeah, this is going to be a real awesome show today. I'm looking forward to it.
I tell you, if it's been done, George has done it. They tell you in life, to seek wise counsel. And there's George is one of those guys you talk to that has wise counsel, right? And so he's done a lot of things in his life and his family and everything, great land stewards. And most importantly, though, he's a friend. And so he's a teammate with us at Southeastern Land Group. And we're so excited to have him as our guest beginning in the next segment. And we're excited about that.
Yeah, George is one of those guys that when you meet him, you just know there's something different about him. Instant friend. Yeah, that's the best way to describe George. Instant friend, instant, hey, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Let me tell you about this fun thing that I did last week. He's just an all around great guy. I'm excited to have him on the show.
Yeah, and George does do a lot of great things. So he's been a lot of places too. So we'll talk to him about that, and maybe he'll give us some recaps of some places he's been here recently. So we're excited about that, and we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we're excited to get this going this morning. And I don't know about you, I think we've had some blustery weather here lately with some wind advisories and some fire and some. I know recently this week. Someone had called and said there was some wildfire down the road from where we live. And I think that's been a kind of a normal thing here in the Southeast and with multiple wildfires in every years. That's
right. In my neck of the woods, we've had a burn ban for the last few weeks, Coweta County. So we've been avoiding burning anything in our backyard. And we did have some weather move through this week. Can't remember what night it was, but some thunderstorms that woke us up in the middle of the night. Yeah. And so we worked through that. Fortunately, no trees down, nothing too bad. But yeah, we want to remind our listeners, hey, when your county or your area is under a burn ban, you want to avoid that.
Absolutely. And, this time of year we're getting into the season of burning season anyway, which is, a fantastic tool and a prescription for, land management of animals and just health of overall stands of just a timber. And so plumes of smoke this time of year is not necessarily a big deal, but it is when the conditions aren't right and the wind and the dryness and low humidity creates a kind of a perfect storm. So just keep that in mind. The Forestry Commission is really good about putting out, when it's good to burn, when it's not. And so just keep a check on your neighbors and just make sure that if you see something, report it, because I got a few reports this week of, fire trucks and Forestry Commission and bulldozers heading all different directions throughout the state. So just be weather aware and condition aware and just check on those around you.
That's right. What's new in your world this week, Brian?
Man, just roll. I tell you what, it's everything, active market and timber, the real estate. And, it's had a chance to really provide value to some folks this week, trying to figure what to do on a certain property. And that's always rewarding. And so it's really just the season between work season. And then, we've got littles. I have two sons, Bruce, who's 12, and John Patton is 10, and just doing all the things that we all do, right? And with soccer and basketball, and my youngest, he's in trail life, and so we had this week, I guess years ago you had like the soapbox derbies, and they had the Lego 500.
Wow!
And so where we meet, so we had a chance to build the Lego truck. They had this super, super nice track, and it was computerized timed. So, wow. I mean, you run 3 at a time. It was 60 something trucks. And I also had a parent division. And I said, you know what? Well, I'm going to build one with you. So he built one and I built one.
Of course.
I didn't realize I may have been one of the few parents that did. And so there was awards given, the kids, they get medals and everything, but the parents, they had, a bag of candy and, a few other odd items. And so I got a can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup in mine. So
what did you place?
I came in third.
Third.
Yeah. Now there may have been only 3 dads and they have done it, but I came in third. And so anyway, that was a lot of fun. So especially the things that you get to do with that, with the camping and everything that comes with that. So that was a big treat this week.
And did you make the car, was it super aerodynamic? Did you put the weight in the right place?
Well, some of when you saw a lot of the trucks in there or cars or what have you, they gave you the wheels. So you had to do your own wheels because apparently that's a thing where you can kind of grind down the graphite and make it super, super fast. And some of them look like, the buses in England, like the double-decker buses.
Right.
Some of them look like that. And I'll be dog if some of them weren't really fast because it's all about weight, right?
Right.
Now I had a little Lego man. I put all my weight toward the front because they slant it, and then his was a lot better than mine was, but a lot of fun. It's good to share those kinds of things with your kids as they're going through the different seasons of life.
That's what it's all about. Yeah, my wife and I celebrated 16 years.
Congratulations!
Yeah, 16 years. Way to hang in there, Kels. By the way, I'll just give you props for that. And so we went to Mexico over the weekend.
Did you really?
Had a great time. Went to Cancun and, visited a resort there and just had a wonderful time of just relaxing. Fortunately, my wife's parents stayed with the kids. Oh. And opening weekend for softball for my daughter's softball team. So they played softball and my, in-laws got to watch that and getting my oldest son to and from all his baseball practices and all that stuff. So they step in and they're just awesome. So really appreciate them. And so back at the grind, things are busy. Yeah. It's busy in the land market. Buyers are starting to wake up. I don't know if it's the temperature warming up and the weather getting a little bit better. Yeah. But I'm getting more calls and that's great. So more sellers are calling, more buyers are calling. Things are starting to move in a positive direction. So I love that my schedule is full this week. Absolutely. And we're blessed and fortunate to be able to have that activity in the market. I do have to ask you though, so you had a chance to fly over the Gulf of America? It was my first time flying over and visiting the Gulf of America. Yeah. And I saw it on Google Maps, they've updated it, Gulf of America. So that's a thing. Yeah. Oh, so what day is your anniversary on? It was actually in January 9th. Okay. I was going to say, mine was March 1st. Yeah. So, well, congratulations. That's just the other day. I know. 17 years. 17 years. Yeah. So I thought, man, we got the same. I didn't realize we were in the same. You're a year ahead of me. So now we can talk all the time and you can give me marriage advice because you're a year ahead. Well, I don't know. I don't know if that'd be a good thing or not, but happy wife, happy life. That's right. Life. That's right. Oh man. Well, I know the year 17 is furniture. Each year has its thing. So year 17 was furniture. And, don't ask me how I knew that. I'm glad you knew that. I was going to say, I don't know what any of the years are. Yeah. And I feel like with some of the things that we've done at our house, I think we've already eclipsed the furniture giving part of that. So, but it was good. We had a great time and, I'll do all the things with the family stuff. So we didn't go to Mexico, but maybe down the line. That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting thing to be married for 16 years. You start to learn things about your partner and what things, they love, what things they don't love, what things they wish you did less of, what things they wish you did more of. I'm fortunate. Kelsey's just an incredible person and she has a lot of grace and patience for me. And so, yeah, it's been an incredible 16 years so far. It is. And it is funny to see, we joke sometimes there was maybe some more adjustments my wife had than I had for when we, I'm like, things have been great. She's like, well, the first few years of getting, and I'm like, wow, I didn't see that at all. I thought it was fantastic. We give each other a hard time about that. And what a blessing it is. And to have someone to go through life with and be your friend and partner and just deal with the complexities of life and be able to enjoy that and being God's creation. And that's a good point. Going through life together, we're all creating legacies, whether we know it or not. And that's a great segue. The guy that we've got on the show today, George, We're going to talk a lot about legacy with him.
Yeah.
You know, as you go through life, listeners, you are creating a legacy. And I hope that people think more about that as they go through their day to day. But as we talk with George today, we're going to hear a little bit about his legacy and his father and grandfather's legacy. So it's going to be an exciting show. I'm excited to hear more about that.
Man, I'm fired up, and you're exactly right. And when we all move on, you know, from here, and you know, it's, you know, what do we teach our family, our kids, and you know, what did we leave for them? And so we're excited to get George in studio and talk to us about that.
Yeah, so looking forward to hearing more of George and his legacy coming up in the next segment. You guys stay with us through this commercial break as we hear from our sponsors, and we'll be back with you shortly.
Hey, this is Kelso Hamilton with Alabama Ag Credit, and we're proud to be part of the Southeastern Land Show. If you're looking to buy land and hearing this radio station, I'm the guy you need to talk to. Buying land isn't the same as buying a home, and we understand the ins and outs of making your dream a reality. We specialize in financing recreational property, timberland, and farms. So when you hear about the perfect property on the Southeastern Land Show, give me a call at 334-301-8122 and get you on the land you've been dreaming about.
Back. You're listening to the Southeastern Land Show along with Cary. I'm Brian. Cary, we got our good friend George in studio here this morning.
George, good to have you this morning.
Thank you, guys. It's great being with you.
Cary, of all the guests that we'll have, I mean, I don't know if we'll have anyone as knowledgeable about so many things as George. I mean, he's a Renaissance man, right? He's a business owner. He's been in manufacturing. He's been at the forefront of tree hunting stands back before tree hunting thing was a thing, right? You know, he's a landowner. He's a phenomenal land steward. With him and his family, been active in various associations and wildlife federation. He's a conservationist. He's an investor. He has a lot of wisdom. He has served his seller and buyer clients with the most skill and wisdom over the many years in land transactions. But as I said earlier, most importantly, he's a dear friend. So George, welcome in.
Thank you, Brian. Glad to be with you guys. It's always fun. We'll have a good time.
I love it. He's a man's man, and his last name is Mann.
That's right. But George, you've done so many things, and you've been a part of this land stewardship and land management with your father, your grandfather, and over the many years. And you've taken that and you've passed it on to your children, and you've also had the opportunity to expose other families and other children by being very just open with the properties that you have and in land and hunting recreation. What has that meant to you as far as your legacy or the legacy of land and land ownership? Being able to be so open with so many people with that and tell the story of what that means. What does that mean to you?
You know, I used to think of it as a hobby.
Yeah.
You know, and it, you know, like you said, I came up, you know, around timber and timber management with my grandfather and my father. And I was always taken out in the woods every weekend. You know, I'd have days, we call them days with my grandfather, and we'd just go hunt birds. And on Highway 51, nobody cared about hunting quail. We just hunted whoever's property where we smelled birds on. And you know, it was just a hobby. And then, you know, you get in your 20s and you realize your hobby become your habits. And then, you know, your habits become the fiber of who you become. Yeah. And, you know, it's kind of just become a part of who we are as a family, but more importantly, myself. And, you know, it's taught me so much about people and nature and God's grace and just God's creation that it really becomes someone, you know, part of who someone is. Yeah. And, you know, the gift that we have had over the last half century now, my family, in sharing God's great outdoors is a lot greater than anything I've got mounted on my wall or anything else. You know, it's a really unique situation where I run into people I think we were at dinner the other night with Jerry DeBen, and back when his daughter, was 14 years old, I believe, and killed her first deer with us. And this is 25 years ago, maybe more. And, he came up to me like it happened last week, just what that impact was on his daughter and himself. And things like that matter. Yeah. There's a lot of things that you think matter. And then, 5 years down the road, it's kind of like, well, what was why did I put so much emphasis in that? Yeah. But, sharing something with someone that may or may not have that opportunity ever again, or very rare in their life, that matters. And that's important. It also is a good example of being a good steward to not only conservation and the outdoors, but also God's creation.
Right. Well, and part of that, and part of being a good land steward, it's more than just, managing deer and turkey, and it's more than, a good timber harvest regimen. And again, those are all great things and all necessities too. But another part of being a land steward is telling the story for the next generation, and still a love for that, for someone else to care about those things, to continue to, manage wildlife and manage timber. And what does that look like? And exposing people. And you and your family over the years have done a tremendous job with that. And tell our listeners about, as far as, the people, whether they're children or adults, that have hunted on your place for the first time, and what that looks like, and what that means to you guys, especially as you've become a little bit more longer in the tooth, and and the people you've taken there, and just that experience for people.
Well, it's funny. Earlier this week, Cary and I were on the phone talking about a new listing in Georgia, and he was talking about he's excited about his son coming up, having the opportunity to maybe kill his first deer in Turkey this year, and we kind of got in the weeds a little bit, but it's interesting because I have a lot of people, like very common, ask me, when is the time right? What age? Yeah, and I told Cary, I said, I know some 7-year-olds that are ready, and I know some 37-year-olds that aren't. So that's part of what you can start to work with on that. Yeah. And the emphasis needs to be on the enjoyment of the outdoors. Don't put the emphasis on, we got to kill an 8-point buck or bigger, or we got to, do this, or as I've said in past interviews and articles and stuff, even because hunting is hunting, you have good days, you have bad days, you see amazing things, and then you see nothing. Zip. I mean, I went twice this year after those snows, and I didn't see a squirrel, I didn't see a bird, I may have seen a cloud, and that was the enjoyment of my day. But you have to put an emphasis for new hunters, new outdoors people that are just being introduced to conservation and the things that we enjoy. You have to put an emphasis on the simple things. Yeah, and look forward to seeing, that robin over there flipping around in the clover, or a red bird being chased around by another cardinal, Yeah. And so by doing that, the younger people today, there's the video games and the phones and the social media. There's so many distractions. And if you can bring it back to the basics, to where you're like, hey, okay, see that rub, while you're sitting in the tree stand or whatever, talk about what's going on around instead of just looking for the 8-point buck. Yeah. And, I have found that advice I give to young parents, or to people that are just getting, just saying, hey, I want to get my kids in the outdoors because I'm tired of them sitting on the couch all day. Right. Get them a fishing rod, show them how to fish, and just introduce them in a way that's interesting, not based on the end result. Just get them out there, enjoy your time with them, and make it simple. It doesn't always have to be with killing the monster buck and, or the long-bearded turkey or whatever. And explain, if you don't want to shoot a young buck, let that be the lesson of the day. Explain to them that it's management. We'd rather shoot, a doe, than a year-and-a-half-old 6-point, and explain why, and, and that anticipation. And guys, I'm telling you, it may not, light bulb may not go off immediately, but if they stay involved, it will. And if they don't, they've had a good experience to enjoy. Yeah. You've been able to spend quality time with the person. I was talking about, 37-year-olds that aren't ready. I have a very dear friend of mine now. I met him, it's been 18, 20 years ago now. and he's a surgeon in Missouri, and we have a mutual friend, and he had never hunted before. And anyway, I met him kind of indirectly, and I said, "Hey man, you want to come down and hunt with us?" And he said, "Sure." So he's been coming down now. He flew his airplane down this past February. Yeah. He's just now got an airplane, and he literally had never hunted or killed anything other than pheasant out. He's from the Midwest. He's out in Missouri, and he just, I asked him when he took his first deer with me, I asked him what was the most memorable thing. He said, tracking it. He said, "I never saw a drop of blood and you were on it like a hound dog." And it's natural to me. I was, like I said, I was fortunate to have a father and a grandfather, and even some friends of my father's that taught me so much about the outdoors. And it rubs off on you. You know what I mean? And I'll testify to that because my son is an incredible outdoorsman and a conservationist. He's 21 years old, and he does stuff now that blows me away. I'm like, golly, I didn't even know he was paying attention when I showed him this. Anyway, but he makes a great shot, and we're losing daylight. I've got a flashlight. We're going in, and he was just like, I was lost, didn't know which way we were walking, and then all of a sudden you're pointing the flashlight at my deer. Yeah. And he said that was fascinating. And he still to this day talks about it. But anyway, so you just don't ever know what kind of impact that, God's outdoors can put on people, put on their minds and their hearts. And it certainly is good for your soul. I think we all can attest to that at this age. So
amen to that. And if, what's the old saying, a bad day fishing's better than a good day doing anything else, right? And in society, and just how everybody, and I don't like using the word busy, because one's busy, somebody is different than somebody else. And but the main thing with technology and just the rapid pace of our society,
sure,
sometimes we need to stop and just kind of just reflect. And a lot of times, the stories that you have, whether it's with your kids or with someone you're taking for the first time, just sitting there in the quiet and just talking about just anything, especially with little ones. And I remember, and you told me this one time, and I've had others too, when I was starting to take mine at a younger age, and they said, as soon as they're ready to go, go.
Yeah.
If you're there 5 minutes, go. Right. Yeah. And I never forgot that, because it allows you want them to enjoy it, not just be forced to sit there and not enjoy it, and just keep bringing them back and make it fun. And, and I've had my youngest, he's like, Daddy, sometimes, I was talking to someone in school, and he's like, I want to talk about games and everything and video games. He said, they don't want to talk about building forts and, playing remote control airplanes and, and playing in the mud. And I said, well, and that's okay, and, different people are exposed to that. And to your point, there's a new generation to where they're not exposed to that as much anymore, or have that, that uncle or that dad that was exposed to it, either to show them how to do that. And, and it's been really cool to see a lot of the different areas and game wardens and putting together things for people who've never shot a gun before, never shot a bow and arrow. What does that look like? Gun safety, especially, and I think, maybe hunting numbers are declining.
Sure.
And because people aren't doing that as much.
And that's something you bring up a good point. I discussed this a pretty good bit, just out and around, is, people say, you're so generous with, having folks come out and, get their first or only experience in the outdoors. And Cary and I were talking earlier this week, and I was telling him about a story about someone that had come out and they didn't really understand the management of the feral hogs that seem to have taken over most of the state of Alabama now. And, after they kind of got a look at what the damage was being done, they got it. And you can take someone out, and I have taken dozens of people that probably have never sat in a blind in the outdoors since, we killed something or didn't. And but hopefully my prayer is that you have an impact on someone to where at least they understand why we as conservationists do it. I fill my freezer every year. I eat venison, and, I always, when I go off and catch something or kill something, I always am eating it, and cleaning it and putting it in the freezer, and so they get an understanding of what wildlife conservation is and why people like us not only spend our time, but our resources into that sort of thing. And, those people end up voting.
Yeah.
And so, we're to the mercy. You were talking about hunting, licensed hunters declining. We're to the mercy of the voting block, to where, the laws that we're going to have to abide by in our seasons are going to be determined by people's perspective on what we do.
Yeah.
And so not all those people are going to be exposed to it. And it's very important to, give a good impression on not only what we do, but why we do it and how we do it responsibly.
Yes.
That is probably the biggest thing that I tell people, don't sit here and throw deer on top of your hood and with blood everywhere. And I know we used to do that, man. When I was in the 70s, my dad killed a big buck and I would ride on the hood of his K5 Blazer around town to show everybody. It'd be freezing. I'd be like 7 years old hanging on.
Yeah.
And, but we just, people are turned off by that. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm just saying be smart about it. Okay. Yeah. And so, put that, leave that in the back of your mind when you're exposing this sort of thing. And like I said, eventually people get it. The people that are never going to get it, they're going to be closed-minded. I think in this political environment that we've been in for the past 16 years or so, we've kind of people that are in the outdoors just realize, hey, I'm not going to convince you otherwise. So that's going to be that. But the enjoyment that we get in sharing it, eventually you get to the point when that is so much more important than any trophy you'll find. So keep that in your mind when you get your place and when you spend your resources on things and you think you've gotten to that point, don't be afraid to share it. I can remember, we were talking about this yesterday or whenever we spoke this week, I can remember when I used to see a 10-point buck and, okay, how can I kill that buck? And now, not all of a sudden, but over the years, now it's like, oh, look at that really nice 4-year-old 10-point. Who can I get to kill that buck?
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing, man. It really is. And one of the greatest things that happened this past season, my 21-year-old son took 2 people to kill their first deer. And this is a guy, he's experienced, he's killed some big bucks, but when I was 21, I was still mad at him. And he took the time from his Christmas break from the University of Alabama to take people hunting. And one of them had never fired a gun. We took him out, got him comfortable with the Winchester Model 70. And it was an all-day experience. And the guy may never pick up a rifle ever again, but he was blown away.
Yeah.
And just that made it all. I got chill bumps talking about it because it was a great experience. And he not only learned about firearm safety, conservation practices, why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah. He learned about the camaraderie. We had a fire pit. We grilled some deer sausage after that evening. Yeah. And it was just an overall great experience, a family experience with my son and I. And I just was so proud of the fact that he took time because I would have taken him. Yeah. But my son Thompson was very adamant. I know, Dad, I want to do this. And he did that twice this year. And, he only's got like 4 or 5 weeks off from school. And he hunted probably 85% of those days by himself. He was after a big buck that I'd seen earlier. And, but he took time off away from that stand on that creek to take 2 people to kill their first deer. And he was successful both times. And, there's nothing better than that.
There is. And I tell you, that's an example of, paying it forward. And a lot of times too, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, not all the time, but usually when you're around people or younger people, say teens, 20-ish or 30-ish, sometimes you doesn't take long to be around them very long. You can tell if they've been exposed to the outdoors and what kind of value that was instilled in them years ago by the kind of people they are. And so they've had a chance to be on the land, in the land, around that environment. And they seem to be, I wouldn't say well-grounded or more grounded, but there's something different about people who have versus those people we know that have not.
A lot of themes of legacy that I'm hearing George talk about, and I'm excited to get into the next segment with George on that. Thanks for listening so far to the Southeastern Land Show. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We've got George Mann on the show, learning about his farm, his legacy, and some really cool hunting stories. So stay tuned.
What does the farm mean to you? Well, maybe it's a piece of land for production for crops or cattle. Or maybe the farm is just a place you can go to relax or enjoy the outdoors. Whatever the farm means to you, First South Farm Credit can help you finance or refinance that perfect piece of land. We've been financing farms and land since 1916. With competitive rates and flexible terms up to 30 years, our professionals know land and land financing. First South provides fast, friendly turnaround to help you secure your ideal tract of land. The farm could be your next business venture, your next land or timber investment, or perhaps your new getaway. At First South Farm Credit, we will help you know what the farm means to you and make your farm purchase a reality. Go by and visit branch manager Taylor Hart. We're located at 1613 Frederick Road in Opelika, near Tigertown. For more information, go to firstsouthland.com. That's firstsouthland.com. Equal housing lender.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Southeastern Land Show along with Cary and Brian. And we've got our good friend George Mann in studio telling us all kind of good stories. And
oh, this has been incredible, George. We have loved having you here. The question I want to ask you right now is, I'm hearing a lot of themes and undertones that you and your family comes natural to y'all is what it sounds like. Sharing the land living lifestyle, sharing the things about the outdoors, hunting, living off the land. That sounds like it is so ingrained in your life. And the question that I have for you right now is, talk to us a little bit about how did your family get started initially with this idea, I don't know if you call it a program, but this idea of fostering the outdoors and the love of the outdoors with new hunters?
That's a really good question. And I don't really think about it often, but we were talking during the break and, it is kind of an enigma how it started. It wasn't like my father said, okay, we're going to start a program where we're going to, lead over 300 people to the outdoors. But my grandfather was a large outdoorsman, and but he, it started with my father in the late 70s. My father was incredibly successful both in business and in hunting, and he, I started to kind of figure this out, and it was kind of a secret of his when he was alive. But it was a way to take out. Back then, we had special permits for doe day. We had doe days. We could kill a female deer in Alabama for 10 days, and then if you showed that you had a population problem or management problem, you could go to the state. And Charles Kelly was the director of Game and Fish back then, and he would give you special permits. And Dad, it was a lot of work. It's kind of, and Dad kind of said, you know what, we can share the outdoors with the experience of taking these, the population down. And that's how it kind of started, I think, in my father's head. He never came right out and admitted that, but I've always, and now that I've gotten, I'm in my 50s now, and I kind of am starting to think like he was back then. And, I think that's just how it started. Next thing you know, it's like, some of his friends were like, hey, I've got a daughter or a son or a nephew or my brother. And they started coming along and we just kind of started doing that. And, Mike Bolton, writer for Birmingham News, he did an article on my dad back in I think it was late 80s. And he ends up coming back down to our farm following season after that article. And he had this big box, and the box, it was big orange hats that said, I killed my first deer with George Mann. And I kind of laughed about it. And so did my dad. And, it was just a gift, but people, it's like, they started saying, I got to get one of those hats. Yeah. And, it was just an extra thing when, part of the experience when somebody come down there, we'd teach them how to shoot or whatever. And then, but, it just, like I said in the opening, in the last segment, it really wasn't a plan or a program. It just became some part of who not only I was, but my family. And, it's like I said, my son, I was just blown away how he took the initiative this year. And, he's at that age when you're supposed to still be kind of selfish. You hear a turkey gobble, you don't tell anybody. I didn't hear anything. Where are you going tomorrow morning? The same place.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of funny, but it's kind of something that's grown, and, the dynamics of if you will, the politics of hunting and shooting and that sort of thing, it has changed so much in the last 40 years, but this is not. This is the same. There's no reason to do this other than sharing it.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where I feel like it's a gift that I've been given, and my son feels the same way, and it's our duty to share that gift. And so if you can put your head around everything I just said, it's not a program. It's just an opportunity to share the outdoors. And then hopefully it does some good. And, as we were talking during the break, these young men and women that get exposed to some of this stuff, it really can change their trajectory in life or understanding things in general. Cause it's hunting is a chance at opportunity.
Yeah.
Life is a lot like that. It's a chance of opportunity. Prepare yourself for that opportunity. Win that buck. Be able to, if you're shooting a bow, practice.
Yeah.
If you're shooting a rifle, practice. Be aware of your surroundings, and when that opportunity presents itself, you can capitalize on it if you're prepared. Well, what better analogy for life is that?
Yeah.
I mean, when the opportunity arises, be prepared to capitalize on the opportunity.
Yeah.
And that is something that if we can just instill a little bit of that in the youth of today, then, and there's a lot of this coming in. I'm really excited about the generation coming up because of some of the young people I've seen. And, it's just an amazing thing. They're really a lot smarter than I was.
Well, and that's just good life advice. Be prepared when the opportunity presents itself.
Right.
Most of us, will only get to see this a few times in our life if we do hunting, that first hunter take their first kill.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about the lives that you've seen changed through that program. And if any examples that you have of somebody that felt one way before and now they feel a different way after.
I don't want to underemphasize it, but I don't know that I've seen a life changing. I think it's just a better understanding and philosophy about life, about what we do, and like I said, there's particular people that come to mind that have told me years later, hey, I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't like bugs, I don't like spider webs. But, I remember back in 2014 when, I came down there with your kids and we did this, and that was just one of the neatest things ever. And I saw you clean a catfish and then fry it. That's something I did with my kids, and I highly recommend, explaining to your kids where stuff comes from, because, ham comes from a pig. Ham doesn't come from Kroger.
Yeah.
You may buy it from Kroger, but that's not where it comes from. And explain that to the young people. And it's a better, they get a better sense of that when you actually are harvesting the animals yourself. And, it's a way of life here in the South. We all know that grew up here. And so instead of being dismissive of people that don't get it because they weren't around it when they grew up.
Yeah.
Be open about it. Be open and explain yourself and the whys and the hows and, I do this because this happened, one year and, and the pigs. That's a whole nother episode with the feral hogs moving in. But yeah, it's that's just another hurdle that you have to get in land management with wildlife conservation.
And God has given us so many different opportunities to educate other people about his creation. So we're talking about wildlife, timber, there's a lot of people that have a certain view of why do we cut trees? Why do we need to? And so there are so many examples of that with just land.
Oh yeah.
And where it's a great jumping off place to encourage other people and educate them on what it means to be a tender of the garden of that we've been provided.
Yeah. And you were talking about timber management. I mean, nothing goes more hand in hand with wildlife management than your forest.
Yeah.
That is their habitat. It is their habitat. It's going to be their habitat. They're incredibly resourceful animals, all of them. It's biblical. They go and do, and you can provide them a better habitat, a changing habitat. Sometimes change is good. Sometimes it's not so good, but they adapt. And that's the fun part of owning land, is you can actually be in charge of the stewardship of that, forest of trees, and all those that live and in that habitat. And that is cool. I mean, you find yourself, I do stuff for turkeys now, and I love to hunt turkeys. I was telling a story off air just a minute ago. My mom asked me what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I said, I want to be a turkey hunter, and about 2 years later, I said, Mom, how do you make $1 million hunting turkeys? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, I sure do wish I could figure that out. I told Brian, I said, if I figure that out, then I'm not telling anybody. But anyhow, I find myself, as much as I still enjoy harvesting turkeys, I get such an enjoyment just seeing them, doing stuff, spending resources. And then this is one of my favorite things is I've hunted animals all over the world, some really difficult things with a bow and arrow and rifle. And it still amazes me that a 20-pound bird with the brain the size of my thumbnail can outsmart a 52-year-old, outdoorsman that can hunt anything down and take it. And, meanwhile, he's sitting there looking at me behind an oak tree, just laughing with his buddies all that evening, and, it's just a great feeling. It's great. These are the joys that I have within, and it does my heart good to share all of those joys and to give an opportunity for someone else to have that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's well said. And I think I've had the opportunity to help you with some stuff on your property. And, it's mentioned you can kind of create different types of environment. And one thing that I continue to learn, and, everything is not cookie cutter. Everything is not in a vacuum. With some of the things that you and I have talked about and with your property or other folks, sometimes get creative. Do something that's outside the norm, and that's something that's not just necessarily in the textbook, and, to provide that diversity, because wildlife of all kinds, they love that diversity. And I know I had the opportunity to look at your place, and your dad, grandfather, y'all started doing a lot of things differently. And it's actually kind of nice to see. It's not just a sterile, cookie cutter type management plan. So, that's a treat.
Folks that are, 20 inches DBH. People are like, those aren't salted. We just planted them before everybody else was planting them.
That's right.
It's funny, the piece of property that he's talking about, he worked on a timber cut, a harvest for me, and we drew it up, and we were in Montgomery, right? Some,
continuing education
ed class. We were bored, and so I started mapping this stuff with Brian, and he was like, "What do you do?" And I put all these wildlife corridor fingers in it, and now we're 2.5 years removed from that.
Yeah,
and I saw turkeys and deer, and they spook in this clear cut we've replanted with loblolly pine on the clear cut, but the fingers of the wildlife corridors, the other day I saw deer and turkey using them for cover, even though there was 125 acres around, but these little fingers go through and they go to them and then they stop and settle down. And that's exactly why we did it. And, that's the fun part. I just, like I said, it's, the thrill of the chase is fantastic, but, the stewardship of providing a great habitat for the wildlife is something that's fun and it's enjoyable with friends. I got lots of friends, but Brian's one of the most consummate professionals in the timber industry, as far as I'm concerned. And I appreciate him for bearing with me and not thinking I was absolutely crazy when I started drawing these maps. But we do things differently out there. You know that we've been able to do that. And I have my cousin is a forester in Georgia, and sometimes he shakes his head at, why did y'all do this? And I'm like, because I wanted to see what would happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. So,
but the fun of the trial and error,
it is fun.
It is. And you always, no matter how long someone has done something, we can always learn something new. And that was really exciting to see that and see how it's come to fruition and produced over the decade y'all had.
That's good stuff. Hey, thanks for joining us, listeners. That's been another great segment with George Mann. Stay tuned as we go to a commercial break. We'll be back with our last segment to talk a little bit with George about the Mann Museum in Montgomery.
Hey, this is Kelso Hamilton with Alabama Ag Credit, and we're proud to be part of the Southeastern Land Show. If you're looking to buy land and hearing this radio station, I'm the guy you need to talk to. Buying land isn't the same as buying a home, and we understand the ins and outs of making your dream a reality. We specialize in financing recreational property, timberland, and farms. So when you hear about the perfect property on the Southeastern Land Show, give me a call at 334-301-8122 and get you on the land you've been dreaming about.
Back. You're listening to the Southeastern Land Show. We've got George Mann in studio, and George, this has been great. This is great information today, and to the point of legacy and family and hunting and just everything, stewardship, conservation. You and your family have provided a tremendous gift a few years ago. If any of our listeners have been around the Montgomery Zoo, they've most certainly walked into the Mann Museum, and I had the opportunity to go for the first time a couple of years ago and saw everything. It was just amazing what was in there. Full body mounts of everything. It seemed like from polar bears to wildebeest or just everything or in between. And I remember calling you and I said, so which one did you kill? And then you said, well, my dad and I killed all of them. And so tell us about the beginning of that and how that came to being. And
it was mostly my father. I mean, without doubt, it was his dream. So, again, my family has been successful and the passions have led us all over the place, hunting animals. My father was an exceptional bow hunter, and he started collecting animals from all over North America, in the 60s. And he had this crazy dream in the kind of early 80s that he wanted to build a museum, a natural history museum for North American animals. And he said he wanted to, instead of a diorama, he wanted a three-dimensional, so you could walk around. Because some of the, I don't know if you guys have ever been up close to a grizzly bear, but one of the most impressive.
Not lately, I should say.
Well, one of the most impressive angles of a grizzly bear is his hindquarters, because you get to see his shoulders and how powerful they are. Well, that was part of my dad's vision for that was, when you go into the Mann Museum, you can walk on three sides of each display. It's not just a diorama where you're looking at a glass pane. You might as well be looking at a painting. And so that was something that was really genius in his regard, because at that point in time in the 80s, you didn't see that.
Yeah.
And we went out to Denver, to the Denver Museum of Natural History. The curator there was a guy named Henry Wickers Inchimuk, and we put him on staff when we built the museum in 1998, and he came in and lived with my parents. He was the director of the Denver one, and so he really knew his stuff. But even he was kind of like, oh, so this is going to be three-dimensional. And we learned a lot about the vocabulary of a fifth grade person, which apparently at the time a marketing team told us that that's what the USA Today is written in. And so everybody can understand it. So a lot of work went into that. My family was kind of all in. My dad was looking at retiring at the time. We put that thing together and built it in Lee County. And I was starting a young family back then at, right around 2000. And we talked with the city of Montgomery, and they had a plan that could perpetuate that museum a lot further than my family could.
Yeah.
And so it made sense. And we moved it over from Lee County or Opelika to, the Montgomery Zoo, and it's been a great partnership. I think they have somewhere north of 350,000 kids that go through there every single year. Again, it exposes them to something. I don't know if you've been through there, but you read about all the things that we've talked about in today's show.
Absolutely.
And so it perpetuates that to another level, maybe not getting them into a shooting table with a rifle or something, but at least gives them a better understanding. So yeah, it's been that was a neat experience. It was a lot of work, especially when it wasn't my career, but I learned a lot about that, and it was a lifelong dream of my father's. And so we actually had it when he passed away in 2015, we had his memorial service there. It was almost like when I looked around and saw all of his friends and all our family, I was like, this is kind of why we built this.
Yeah.
And it was just really cool. I had like one of those wow moments. And so it's good. And it's just another way for our family to share the outdoors and let people have a better understanding and maybe let them take away something that they never thought of, or, it's kind of like, a different perspective.
Yeah.
So,
well, when with kids going through and having that sense of wonder, you're planting the seeds, and it's just in life, we're just going through planting seeds. You never know when those things come to top of mind again. And one thing that I noticed too, when we walk through it, you could almost just reach out and touch them, and having those displays the way they are, it was very attractive, not just to my boys and other kids, me as an adult, I'm like, man, this is so cool. You can really get that close to them. And one thing I noticed too, there's 2 of everything in there. What's the story with that? There's pairs of, I think the last time I was there was 2 of everything that was in there was pairs of them, or at least most of what I saw.
It's a collection of a lot of North American wildlife, and some of the things you may be seeing there could be like taken different regions of the country of North America, rather. Every detail in that thing, and let me tell you something, it's making me exhausted just thinking. It was very exhausting. In fact, one of the main reasons is, like I said, we started having kids, and it was a lot on us. But my dad had this, like I said, I credit him for, he had the vision all along, and I'm talking 10 years before it was even built. And because we used to think he was crazy. We were like, but my mom, my mother, she's no longer with us, but I used to joke with her, she needed to write a book called There's a Moose in My House, because he had literally a 2,000 pound, 60 something inch bull moose mounted full behind her couch in her living room. And because he didn't have anywhere else to put it. And until he built the museum. And so I grew up, when we build the museum, then I became an adult, and then I figured out he was waiting on me to get big to help him build the museum. So, but yeah, it's been I have yet to hear anything derogatory. Yeah. Like every time I've ever, and now I'll go places and I just meet somebody and they're like, man, do you have anything to do with the Mann Museum over there in Montgomery? And I'm like, yeah. It's our family. We founded that, and they always have something positive to say. And by the way, the Montgomery Zoo is fantastic. I mean, it really, the first time I was ever, I'm sorry to say it, I never went in there until we started negotiating with putting the museum there. And I went over there and I was blown away. Yeah. And since then we've got African elephants and all kinds of neat stuff, but it is, you kind of sit there in Montgomery, Alabama, and go, I can't believe this is here.
Exactly.
It's better. I'm not going to mention other towns or cities, but it's a first class facility for everything. And so it was a good partnership. And I tell you, like I said, they have exposed so many people to what our family's mission was to do. Yeah. And for that, we appreciate them.
Yeah. And so you've had a chance to go all over the world and hunt for everything. Is everything there just North American, or is it
just North
all
America
over the world?
Okay. Yeah. It's okay. I don't know, because my passion since the mid 2000s has been over in the continent of Africa, and we have our things that in our heads, but we'll see what happens with that. But I hunted largely North America early in my hunting career. Yeah. And I was able to have much success with the bow and arrow. And then, so I go to Africa, and man, that's all I want to do now. And people ask me, do I bow hunt Africa? And I say, I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. Stuff over there will get you, they'll grab you and eat you a lot faster than most of the stuff over here in North America. So we'll see what happens. We may expand it. I don't know. We'll see.
Cary, I'm sensing another show at some point to have those kind of stories, because I was following you when you went over there, and the things you'd post, and there's a lot of stories behind a lot of the things you got to see over there. So we'd love to hear more about that.
Absolutely.
For There's a lot more to share, I'm sure. So, George, the one thing we ask all of our guests, thanks for being on the show, by the way, but the one thing we want to ask every guest at the end of the show is, this is a Southeastern show.
Certainly.
So we're curious from you, where is your favorite place to go in the Southeast to visit?
Favorite place in the Southeast U.S.? That's a really tough question, because, it's home. I grew up here. There's the Gulf of Mexico, so many good times down there, so much to offer, Yeah. This is going to kind of strike y'all as funny, or I'd probably have to say Macon County, Alabama. The older I get, the more peaceful solitude where you don't hear any roads, don't hear any airplanes. You're there, working your land or enjoying your land or both. But I would probably say that's where I go on Sunday afternoons after church. We go to, my regular day is get up, go to church, go to lunch, and then go to Timber Top. And so I would probably have to say that's it.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I love the mountains of North Carolina, North Georgia. I love the Gulf of Mexico. Lee County is obviously home to me. But I would probably say Macon County, down a dirt road in Macon County, Alabama is probably my favorite place.
That's awesome.
I saw in a picture one time and said, I've been all around the world to realize home is where I needed to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, there's a lot of value in that. It hits home for sure.
Well, I can tell you, I've done some extensive traveling, and it's always good to get home. It's exciting and adventurous, but it's always good to be home. And like I said, I still like to get after the wild turkeys, and we're coming up on that pretty quick.
Yep, absolutely.
Pretty soon. Well, George, we can't thank you enough for being here with us today, and this will be the first of many times. We'd love to have you in here. You've done a lot of things and been a lot of places, and have a whole lot more stories too. So we didn't even skim the surface, but we appreciate you being here today. And so as we sign off today, we want to remind everybody that land is not only a financial investment. As we were talking to George earlier, it's an investment in time with your family and friends. If you're looking to sell or buy land across the Southeast or dreamed of living the land living lifestyle, our team at Southeastern Land Group would be glad to serve you and your family. For more information, please visit our website at selandgroup.com or give us a call at 866-751-LAND. Amanda, Susan, and Jordan at the office will be glad to talk with you and put you in the right contact with any kind of property throughout the Southeast. For Cary Farrington, I'm Brian Watts. Be sure to tune in next week for another great episode of the Southeastern Land Show.
Have a great day.
What does the farm mean to you? Well, maybe it's a piece of land for production for crops or cattle. Or maybe the farm is just a place you can go to relax or enjoy the outdoors. Whatever the farm means to you, First South Farm Credit can help you finance or refinance that perfect piece of land. We've been financing farms and land since 1916. With competitive rates and flexible terms up to 30 years, our professionals know land and land financing. First South provides fast, friendly turnaround to help you secure your ideal tract of land. The farm could be your next business venture, your next land or timber investment, or perhaps your new getaway. At First South Farm Credit, we will help you know what the farm means to you and make your farm purchase a reality. Go by and visit branch manager Taylor Hart. We're located at 1613 Frederick Road in Opelika, near Tigertown. For more information, go to firstsouthland.com. That's firstsouthland.com. Equal housing lender.